I think we're going to start off by playing a short show reel, so let's see if the VT works.
MOBO Awards. And this makes me proud to be Britain.
Women should be in the kitchen. Women shouldn't be allowed to box. Sounds funny now, but this was real life for me growing up.
The spirit of MOBO is growing, and if I'm just a musician, then, you know, I wouldn't get one of these.
These are the giants whose shoulders I stand on, and I hope that next year somebody will be standing on my shoulders, so long as it's not CeeLo bloody Green. Thank you for this, it's lovely, peace.
It's just not enough of us on the donor bus, not enough of us just taking time out to give blood.
Yeah, I was gassing the MOBO Awards. Why? Because I ain't won a MOBO before.
Go low, everybody get low. Had a couple hits and a couple solos. Now I got a couple Brits and a couple MOBOs. Don't pass that, everybody logo. I was hoping off the mic.
Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I could never imagine this.
But we get lost, roll low, on the stage show, yo. You know how it goes. But the girls like,
It could be better if it had a couple more wings.
So hello, I'm Kanya King, founder and CEO of the MOBO Group. In fact, it's nice to be called Kanya King because usually I get called Kanye many times. I'm so glad he's changed his name to Yi because I'm hoping everybody will forget that Kanye existed. No, not really. Femi, I think there's another calling for you, and that's on stage because you're just so hilarious listening to you.
And British Kevin Hart, that's what they call it.
Love it, love it. You're taller than Kevin. Anyway, we digress. So the MOBO organisation, I mean, it was founded to celebrate the instrumental role that black music and culture has made to the world. Now, we do this through everything from multi-artist shows, our flagship event, the MOBO Awards, to film screenings, premieres, creative campaigns, generating content. In fact, on the video, you saw Be Positive, and Be Positive are a choir made up of sickle cell members and their supporters. And the idea that was they were formed in partnership with NHSBT in order to encourage more black people to register and donate blood because there's a shortage out there. And it was just incredibly rewarding to use the kind of platform we have for a bigger purpose, because we got fed up of always hearing about the negativity surrounding black music. And we wanted to sing a different tune. And it was just fantastic to work with a partner like the NHSBT and just kind of, you know, we worked for a couple of months. Be Positive, which is a mindset as well as a blood type, the name, ended up performing on the MOBO Awards. We gave them their very first platform, and then they went on to, if anybody saw them, Be Positive were on Britain's Got Talent. Is that Britain's Got Talent? Yes. And became Simon Cowell's wild card. So we're kind of really proud of the kind of continuing success that Be Positive are continuing to do. Now, our ethos has always been that any person, kind of regardless of their background, should be able to reach their full potential through their own creative endeavours. And we, you know, wanted every kind of young kid in any bedroom or community or family to be able to think big and be inspired. And that was always a kind of burning desire from the beginning. So, I mean, now it's, you know, for over 2 decades. Can you believe it? 2 decades. I know I look a lot younger. We've been a leading force in kind of champion urban music and culture. And, you know, every act who's ever been nominated or won a MOBO award has a story to tell. And now we're trying to tell more stories beyond the realms of music. And so that is why, you know, we've set up a kind of a film production company, and that is why we're kind of hosting kind of movies, I guess, of Black origins. So my upbringing, I guess, was my driving force in setting up a business. I grew up being the youngest girl of 9 children, and I always had lots of kind of creative dreams and goals. And my father died when I was very young, and obviously having 9 children, you know, I needed to kind of support the family. So whenever I, you know, wanted to go to, you know, the Tricycle Theatre to act, or, you know, to kind of play music, you know, we couldn't afford to do that. And so, you know, I had to take any job I could get to kind of pay the bills. And I truly believe, standing up here today, that gave me the drive and determination and also resilience that you need to run a business. Because I often, when you go to events, sometimes you hear someone talking about setting up their own business and trying to grow it, and it sounds easy, but it's not. And it's extremely challenging. And that's why I kind of admire you two being best friends, having your best friend to kind of be able to talk to and kind of share ideas and bounce off. Because in the beginning, when I started off, you know, I was talking about inequality in the music industry. And, you know, I said, you know, it was, well, let me tell you about the time, you know, I started. It was in 1996. So it was a kind of very, very different climate. It was a time when, you know, Ella Fitzgerald had died, you know, and Tupac. And it was a significant chapter for Black culture. And Nelson Mandela had been released from prison after 27 years of captivity. And the place he chose to visit was Brixton, you know, here in London, an area identified with inequality. And at the time, there was this song called 3 Nelson Mandela, you know, kind of performed by a multiracial group, the Specials. And, you know, it made us all feel that we're, you know, we're bigger than the sum of its parts. And, you know, music has always been used as a kind of, you know, music has always kind of can empower you and inspire you to transcend racial injustices. And, you know, I went around talking to lots of people because Britpop, you know, it's all about Britpop. Spice Girls were big at the time. And, you know, reggae, hip hop, you know, the mainstream weren't very receptive to those music genres. So I wanted to do something about it. So I remember going to see kind of many kind of organisations talking about, you know, the kind of music I grew up listening to. And I was told that, you know, Black music won't sell, the media won't get behind it, you know, it just will never work. If you were to do, you know, something like a platform celebrating Black music, artists wouldn't show up. So I had to kind of shut out all the noise in my ear, and which we all have, and, you know, the detractors. And my overwhelming desire kind of led me to kind of remortgage my house. You know, against my mother's better judgment, because my mother always wanted me to be a teacher, and I kind of failed in the traditional aspect, but I find myself often on stages, so I'm teaching in another way. But yes, so the climate we're in, you know, was kind of, the musical landscape was changing, you know, and I was surrounded by so many kind of talented artists, and I just needed to do something about it. And so I remember being so frustrated after talking to so many organisations. I thought, you know what, I'm going to make this happen, you know, and I can relate so much to, you know, what everyone has said here. So, you know, what did I end up doing? I ended up, you know, contacting broadcasters. I ended up contacting Tony Blair, was leader of the opposition. We'd had 17 years of a Conservative government at the time, and he was seen as the big hope. So we contacted everybody, and I remember, not getting any replies, but, obviously, that I was very kind of persuasive. So I ended up asking Tony Blair's office, is it okay if we keep in touch with you? And they said they were very polite and said yes. So every time we had some sort of good news, I would kind of share it with them. And then like when, we got our TV slot, and I don't know how I'm doing with time, but
yeah, but I'm fascinated by the story. Yeah.
No. Okay.
This is how the negotiations with your sponsors. You're like, maybe just 2 minutes more, because then it'll be good to take a couple of questions. And I think there's going to be so many.
Okay. All right then. So I remember. Talking to, obviously Tony Blair's office, and, there's a fine line being persuasive and being a pain. And I kind of balanced that quite right. I balanced that quite well. And I ended up, getting a message back saying, don't get all your hopes up, but, Tony Blair would like to come to your first show, and, he's going to be bringing Sherry Blair. So, of course, we then went into overdrive. And by this time, we had had a launch, because nobody had heard of, obviously, the name. We'd come up with the name MOBO, a short name that would be memorable. So we launched the concert of Ministry of Sound on a Sunday, and we got loads of coverage. And then I was recommended to a broadcaster, and it was at the time they were doing a lot of research, recognising that kind of a London audience would become more diverse. And so I remember being told, look, Kanya, we've got good news and bad news for you. The good news is we're going to give you a TV slot. The bad news is we've got little budget and you've got to put on the show in 6 weeks. But, when you get opportunities like that, my overwhelming desire to succeed allowed me to kind of assemble a crew and just make it happen. And so I remember when, Tony Blair ended up showing up, we had global superstars from all around the world. They wanted to shake hands with him, saying, we want to shake hands with the new Prime Minister. And that went down very, very well. And I remember, my mother at the time couldn't wait to sort of jump on Tony Blair, because she said to him, look, I've got this fantastic, hardworking daughter, because she was trying to persuade him to give me a job. Because she couldn't accept at the time that I was running a company and employing other people. And so, it was hilarious. And I think it was only when I got my MBE in 1999 that she thought with royal recognition, I was doing okay. So I was doing okay after all. I guess I just quickly end by, sharing, a story with you. There was this guy that was walking down the street, and when he falls down a hole in the ground, and the walls are so steep that he can't get back out again. And people are passing by, and then he hears a singing voice, and he recognises it is his friend. So he says, Kofi, can you hear me? And he said, hey, Kofi. So Kofi then jumps down the hole. And our guy says, are you stupid? We're both down here. How are we going to get out? And Kofi says, I've been down here before, so I know the way out. And basically what I'm trying to say is kind of knowledge is power. And I guess in kind of linking up with what was being said earlier, knowledge shared is power multiplied. So I really believe that, working together, we can achieve so much more. And that is what I also agree is missing. I think we can be, a huge kind of force together, working collaboratively. And I think that is the future of kind of entrepreneurship and in this ever-changing landscape. So thanks very much.
Wonderful. Wow. I love that. Yeah, knowledge shared is power multiplied, isn't it? It's incredible. There's a theme that's coming along about that camaraderie and that camaraderie being the future. The thing I remember most, Kanya, about the first time interviewing you, which must have been about 8 odd years ago, the very first time, was when you told the story of when you were trying to get the MOBOs off the ground and get people to support it, and you said you kept on hearing no. And every time that you heard a no, you weren't hearing it just purely as a no, you saw these no's as kept getting nearer to be a yes.
Yeah.
Is that fire, is that still in your DNA? Do you still see things like that as things have continued?
Without a shadow of a doubt, when I get, the answer no, and, I remember definitely starting out, it was no all the time. No to me meant not over. The conversation is not over. So I then would think, well, why are they saying no? And I would then go back, apply things differently, think about it and go back. And it's amazing how many times people have said no, and when I've gone back to them, I've ended up doing a far better partnership deal, or we've ended up expanding into a new area. So definitely for me, I've always had that kind of drive and determination. And I think a lot of that is to do with, my kind of background and, both my parents came here, at a kind of young age, and it was kind of very isolating experience. So whenever things aren't going well for me, I think, well, look how bad it was for my parents. They suffered discrimination. I remember we, moved so many times, and, it was just kind of a bleak experience. And despite all of that, my mother was always kind of taking in homeless people to kind of support and champion them. And, she was always in kind of like a caring profession. So for me, I always think, what's the worst that can happen? And, no is not terminal.
When you watch that film, the film...
Yes, you can clap.
Yeah. And by the way, do get your questions ready because we're nearly there. When you watch that film, and I'm so glad you showed us that film because I was just thinking, wow, and just remembering that journey. What emotions do you feel? And the very first time when you saw that film, what emotions did you feel? Because it has been a long journey since 1996. What did you feel?
I feel it's a mixture of emotions, to be honest with you, because you've got so many different memories, really. Every act we've had on the show, people think putting on a multi-artist show is easy. We make it look easy. And it's great. I've got some of my team members in the audience. Ali's waving, and Nikki, and Henk with the camera. And, we have a small team, but we punch above our weight. And, we're kind of balancing many different partners and stakeholders. So we might be dealing with broadcasters, suppliers, or kind of agents, or managers, or talent. And charities, and it goes on and on and on and on the list. And there's always things that are outside of your control. That you cannot plan or you cannot foresee. And so, it's like, probably this is why I've never got married. Because the idea of planning for a wedding sounds like a nightmare to me, But yeah, so, I guess there's a mixture of emotions. One of the emotions I feel is I'm proud. So there's a lot of artists who, we've given them their first TV platform, and you've gone on seeing them become global superstars. So you feel a lot of pride in their journey. And there's been so many kind of artists over the years. But yeah, there's a lot.
So many questions I want to ask. Maybe I just want to ask one more about I want to ask what's been the biggest business lesson, because I get the feeling there's been so many, and what I got a wonderful sense of from when you were speaking was that, and you touched on it, how it's not always been easy, and the business journey isn't an easy one, and that when people often look in, they don't often see the hard work. And one of the moments that struck me was about when you said was about the remortgaging and so on. What was the most difficult business time and the biggest business lesson?
Wow, gosh, there's so many, to be honest with you. I guess, one lesson, okay. I remember kind of one year, you worked so hard and we'd put on this incredible show. And, you know, I was thinking, wow, you know, we're going to get this fantastic kind of coverage in the kind of papers the next day. But that same night, there was an after-show party. And and basically a lot of unsavory people showed up at this party, and the front page headline said "Mayhem at the MOBO Awards" at an after-show party that had nothing to do with us. And in the papers, it talked about everything from kind of gun shooting to drugs to rape, all of these things. And it was just such a shock. And we'd had a successful event and a successful after-show party. And so straight away, I found legal representation. And even I had a top lawyer, but even he was advising me, do not take legal action. You know, you think you can take on, you know, this corporation. And I thought, well, we didn't do it, you have to do something about it. And so in the end, you know, we had this legal battle, and we managed to get an apology from the paper, and the apology was on page 17 that people didn't see. And what I didn't realise at the time was the kind of ramifications for us. Because after that, sponsors stopped being interested in us, venues, you know, didn't want to take our call. I even remember the next day, a kind of a courier company not wanting to kind of drop off a parcel to us. You know, I'm not sure what they were expecting to find, but it was unbelievable, you know, and truly that should have wiped us out. I don't even know why we still exist to this day, but it was just, I thought, it's not going to be the end of us, you know. And I think it taught me kind of I guess, a very powerful lesson that, you know, in business, things will happen outside of your control. And you need to have the mental agility to be able to deal with it. And I thought we can't be as good as any other kind of mainstream brand putting on live music shows out there. We have to be better. You know, and I had this saying that I often say in my head, don't get bitter, get better. So we raised our game.
Wow.